lot, when I was president of my neighborhood association, a lot of fixed income seniors, they retired, paid off their house, but they're getting squeezed because their appraisals keep going up. So their property taxes go up $300-400 every year, and if you're on a fixed income, you can't make that work after a while. The utility rates have been going up. So I was always concerned about affordability, but I found out in the 2010 census, this was shocking. 1 out of every 5 Austin residents is below the federal poverty line. Statewide in Texas, it's 18%. We have a higher poverty rate in Austin, Texas than we do statewide. We have 1 in 4 children under the age of 18 in Austin, Texas, below the poverty line. And nobody's talking about that.
Right,
So
I think those stats came out this week, right?
Yeah, and there was another
also a piece on the elder.
That's right. It's a huge problem. I mean, that nobody's been talking about, nobody's been addressing.
What do you think needs to be done to address it?
I think first and foremost is stop ignoring it. We've ignored it. It's one of those deals. It's just we've been focusing things like banning plastic bags. I mean, really. I mean, we spent a year and a half talking about plastic bags, not talking about are the elderly in our community going to be able to stay in their houses. So I think that's one. Two, I think part of it is getting a better grip on city spending, particularly at our utility companies. Right now they're talking about raising our base utility rate by 13 to 15%. And quite frankly, it's probably needed. But the reason it's needed because we've been reckless with the budget over there at Austin Energy for so long that we basically bankrupted the utility company. And they haven't really told the full story about that. So I think one thing that we have to do, because utilities represent a disproportionately high percentage of people's household budget, especially for poor. So I think making sure that we get a handle on our budget at Austin Energy so we keep our rates affordable. And part of that is going to be, again, it gets back to reforming government. Right now, Austin Energy is about $1 billion a year enterprise. I mean, that's its budget, $1 billion, revenue and expenditures. The city council acts as the board of directors for Austin Energy, as well as the city council. So what they do every year, literally, they hit the gavel and they say, okay, we're now the board of directors for our $1 billion energy company. Then what they do is they say, we're approving a 9.1% gross transfer of gross revenues for our energy company into our general fund. They hit the gavel. They say, okay, now we have an extra $100 million. Well, wow, we just balanced the budget. Not only do they do that, but there are some estimates that somewhere between $50 and $80 million additional to what I just described. The city council directs Austin Energy to spend on things that have nothing to do with providing electric service. So, for example, I'm trying to think of some of the money. For example, they just approved, and this is just one small, big picture, but it tells you what goes on. They just approved $800,000 from Austin Energy's utility budget to pay for an art wall, an $800,000 art wall around the new green water treatment plant. Or I'm sorry, yeah, the redevelopment of green water treatment plant downtown, or the Seahole plant, I should say. I'm sorry, what does that have to do with providing reliable electric service? Nothing. But you keep doing that over and over and over and over again, you drain your revenues. So what's the only way you make that up? Sorry, we've got to raise your electric rates. It's insanity. So I think one of the things you do to fix that is you do what they did in San Antonio, where you have an independently appointed board of directors of the public utility company, because San Antonio has a public utility company. So you say, listen, council's going to approve these members, but they're going to serve for 6-year terms, so we can't manipulate them politically. They're going to represent geographic areas of the service region, so that if you're one of the northwest, quadrants of our city, this is your representative of the utility company. And they get to make independent decisions about the future, about the utility company. So how much do we spend? How much do we collect? Do we need to raise revenues? Do we not? But most importantly, they get to determine, okay, city council, sorry, we didn't have a good year this year. So you're not getting 9.1% of our gross revenues. You're getting 3%. That's how the company should be run. If you do that, then I think you can really tamp down on our utility rates. You get a handle and control that piece of the cost puzzle. Now that's complicated, and a a lot of people say, that's not something you do overnight, but if we don't do that now and start having these conversations, this will be the first of many utility rate increases. Because I will tell you what's so stunning to me, when the new general manager for Austin Energy came in 2 years ago, he literally, within 2 months of taking that office, he gave a presentation from the city council with the chart showing, here's our revenues, over the next 5 years. We're heading towards financial crisis, city council, over here at the utility company. Literally a month later, the city council approved a 9.1% transfer of gross revenues from Austin Energy into the city budget to balance the budget. Now, how irresponsible is that? And that's part of the problem, because the council doesn't want to make tough budget decisions. It's very simple. Just move money and say, we balance the budget. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to have to make tough decisions about our budget, and if we get some extra money from the utility company this year, well, then that's just butter. So, I think that's kind of a big reform piece that has to happen, but that long term will have, a tremendous impact on utility rates for the positive, I think. And then the other piece, again, is just getting the politics out of it. The city of Austin recently adopted a alternative energy plan, which I support. I support trying to get to more alternative energy sources, but they basically set an arbitrary political thing. They said by 2020, we want that pie chart of energy to be, so many for this, so much for that, and to get us off coal and traditional uses. That's fine, but there's no business model. You don't just set a date and say we're going to just meet the date. And what's happening is the other piece of the utility that people don't realize is not just about your rates. There's also something called a fuel charge on your bill. That fuel charge goes up without city council approval. The utility company just raised it last January. They raised it 16%, and all the costs that are going to be borne from that alternative energy plan are going to be fed through that fuel charge keep going up. I'm not against it, but you've got to have a business model that takes into account how do we do this in a responsible way. How do we do this without putting so much pressure on our ratepayers, without creating financial pressure on the utility company's budget, and then you back into a date. Hey, we can do it responsibly by this date. Instead, the city council, because we let politics infuse itself into the management of the energy company, just set an arbitrary date, and I think we're going to pay for that in a big way. I should say ratepayers will pay for that in a big way. So affordability is one of my big deals.